Have you ever walked through a neighborhood and noticed a house where one giant tree seems to swallow the entire yard? The lawn sits in permanent shade, cracked sidewalks reveal powerful roots. Beneath the surface, branches scrape the roof during every storm, and what once looked like a perfect sapling has become an expensive problem. This happens far more often than most people realize, and it all begins with one simple mistake: choosing a tree based only on how it looks when it's young. Many homeowners fall in love with a beautiful tree at the garden center without asking one critical question: what will this tree look like 20 or 30 years from now? A tree that fits comfortably into a small pot today may eventually spread wider than the entire garden. Removing an oversized, mature tree can cost thousands of dollars, while selecting the right tree from the beginning provides decades of beauty, shade, flowers, fruit, and wildlife without overwhelming your outdoor space. The good news is that small gardens are actually ideal for many wonderful trees. Modern horticulture offers an incredible selection of compact ornamental trees, dwarf fruit trees, narrow columnar varieties, slow-growing species, and carefully grafted cultivars that provide everything larger trees offer while remaining perfectly manageable. Today, we're exploring the best trees for small gardens, how to choose the right one for your climate and soil, which mistakes to avoid, and how to create a landscape that becomes more beautiful every year instead of more difficult to maintain. One of the biggest misconceptions is that every tree develops massive, destructive roots. In reality, root systems vary tremendously between species. While roots generally spread well beyond the canopy, they usually grow where oxygen and moisture are available rather than aggressively searching for concrete to break. Problems often occur because trees are planted too close to structures or because the wrong species is chosen for the location. That's why choosing the right tree involves much more than appearance. Mature height, canopy, width, root characteristics, growth speed, maintenance requirements, disease resistance, flowering habits, seasonal interest, pollination needs, and local climate all determine whether a tree becomes a treasured centerpiece or a future headache. Let's begin by understanding what actually makes a tree suitable for a small garden. Generally, trees reaching between 10 and 25 feet at maturity fit comfortably into most modest residential landscapes. Some may grow slightly taller while maintaining an exceptionally narrow canopy, making them excellent choices where horizontal space is limited. Growth rate matters just as much as final size. Fast-growing trees often appear attractive because they provide shade quickly, but rapid growth frequently comes with weaker wood, shorter lifespan, or increased maintenance. Slower-growing species usually develop stronger branch structures, better longevity, and more predictable shapes. Here's an interesting gardening fact. Many experienced landscape designers intentionally choose slower-growing trees because they spend less time correcting structural problems later. A tree that grows steadily over decades often requires less pruning than one that shoots upward rapidly during its early years. Canopy shape deserves careful attention. Rounded crowns create generous shade but require more room. Vase-shaped trees allow filtered sunlight beneath them. Columnar trees grow upright with very narrow spreads, making them perfect beside driveways, patios, or property boundaries. Now let's explore some outstanding ornamental trees. One of the most popular small garden trees is the Japanese maple. Depending on the variety, mature heights typically range from 8 to 20 feet with graceful branching and spectacular foliage that changes throughout the seasons. Japanese maples thrive in well-drained soil and appreciate protection from intense afternoon sun in hotter climates. Their slow growth, refined appearance, and relatively compact root systems make them favorites among landscape professionals. The advantages include outstanding autumn color, elegant structure during winter, manageable size, and excellent performance in small spaces. The disadvantages include sensitivity to drought, occasional leaf scorch in very hot climates, and slower establishment compared to vigorous species. If spring flowers are your priority, flowering dogwoods deserve serious consideration. Their spectacular blooms brighten the landscape early in the season, followed by attractive foliage, colorful berries, and vibrant fall color. Dogwoods generally mature between 15 and 30 feet depending on the variety. They prefer fertile, well-drained soil with consistent moisture and appreciate some afternoon shade in warmer regions. Besides their ornamental beauty, dogwoods provide valuable food for birds and support numerous native pollinators during flowering. Another excellent flowering option is the eastern redbud. Few trees announce spring as dramatically as a redbud covered with pink blossoms before its leaves emerge. Mature heights usually range from 20 to 30 feet, although several compact cultivars remain smaller. Heart-shaped leaves provide summer beauty, while interesting seed pods add winter character. Here's a practical tip from experienced gardeners. When choosing flowering trees, pay attention not only to bloom color but also to flowering duration, disease resistance, and branching structure. A tree that flowers beautifully for 2 weeks, but remains attractive during the other 50 weeks of the year offers far greater long-term value. Now let's discuss compact fruit trees. Many people believe fruit production requires a large orchard, but modern dwarf rootstocks have completely transformed home gardening. Dwarf apple trees are among the best examples. Depending on the rootstock, a mature dwarf apple tree may remain only 8 to 12 feet tall, while producing impressive harvests. This introduces one of the most important concepts in fruit tree selection: rootstocks. The variety determines the fruit, but the rootstock largely controls tree size, vigor, disease tolerance, adaptability, and sometimes even drought resistance. Imagine 2 identical apple varieties producing the same fruit. One grows 30 feet tall because it's on a vigorous rootstock. The other remains under 10 feet because it's grafted onto a dwarfing rootstock. Same apples, completely different trees. That's why knowledgeable orchardists always ask about both the variety and the rootstock before purchasing. Dwarf rootstocks offer numerous advantages. They simplify harvesting. Pruning becomes easier. Spraying, if needed, requires less effort. Fruit often appears earlier than on standard trees. Small trees fit beautifully into limited spaces. However, dwarf trees sometimes require permanent staking because their smaller root systems provide less anchorage than vigorous rootstocks. They also appreciate consistent watering during establishment. Compact pears perform similarly. Many dwarf pear trees reach only 10 to 15 feet while producing abundant crops. They prefer full sun and well-drained soil and benefit from annual pruning to maintain good airflow. Peaches, nectarines, plums, apricots, and cherries are also available on dwarfing rootstocks in many regions. Before buying any fruit tree, verify whether it requires a compatible pollination partner. Some varieties are self-fertile and produce fruit independently. Others require pollen from another compatible variety blooming at the same time. Ignoring pollination requirements is one of the most common reasons gardeners become disappointed after planting healthy trees that never produce significant fruit. Here's another useful insight. Pollinators rarely travel in perfectly straight lines. Planting flowering herbs and native flowers nearby helps attract bees throughout the growing season, increasing pollination opportunities for fruit trees. Columnar fruit trees represent another remarkable innovation. These trees grow almost straight upward with very short side branches, often reaching 8 to 12 feet in height while remaining only 2 or 3 feet wide. They're perfect beside fences, along walkways, or in narrow side yards where traditional trees simply won't fit. Although their harvest may be smaller than wider trees, several columnar trees planted together can provide surprising productivity in minimal space. Now let's examine evergreen choices. Compact conifers offer year-round structure and privacy. Dwarf spruces, slow-growing firs, and compact pines maintain attractive forms with relatively little maintenance. Unlike many deciduous trees, They continue providing visual interest during winter while offering shelter for birds. When selecting evergreens, remember that many grow slowly during their first years before gradually accelerating. Always verify mature dimensions rather than relying on current nursery size. Climate plays an enormous role in tree selection. A tree thriving in one region may struggle completely elsewhere. This is where USDA hardiness zones become valuable. These zones estimate average annual minimum winter temperatures, helping gardeners determine which species can survive local winters. However, hardiness zones represent only one piece of the puzzle. Summer heat, humidity, rainfall, wind exposure, drainage, soil texture, soil pH, all influence long-term success. For example, a tree may survive winter temperatures perfectly but perform poorly in regions with prolonged summer humidity or heavy clay soils. Experienced arborists often recommend observing healthy mature specimens already growing successfully within your community. Local success provides valuable evidence that a species is well adapted. Let's talk about soil. Many small garden disappointments begin below ground. Compacted soil restricts root growth. Poor drainage suffocates roots. Extremely sandy soil dries rapidly. Heavy clay retains excessive moisture. Before planting, perform a simple drainage test by filling a hole with water and observing how quickly it drains. Healthy drainage encourages vigorous root development while reducing disease risks. Here's a surprising fact. Most tree roots occupy the upper 18 to 24 inches of soil because that's where oxygen is most available. This explains why soil compaction from repeated foot traffic or heavy equipment can significantly affect tree health even without damaging visible roots. Now let's discuss planting location. Never choose a planting site based solely on today's appearance. Visualize the mature tree. Will branches eventually reach the roof? Will the canopy block solar panels? Could roots compete with nearby vegetable beds? Will neighboring plants lose sunlight? Leave adequate distance from foundations, retaining walls, underground utilities, septic systems, sidewalks, and property lines according to the expected mature size of the chosen species. Remember that correcting a poor planting location decades later is usually far more expensive than selecting a better location today. Spacing between trees is equally important. Crowded trees compete for sunlight, water, nutrients, and airflow. Poor airflow encourages fungal diseases, reduces fruit quality, and increases pruning requirements. Proper spacing allows each tree to develop naturally while simplifying maintenance and improving overall garden productivity. Underplanting beneath trees offers another opportunity to maximize limited space. Many woodland plants thrive beneath open canopies. Shade-tolerant perennials, spring bulbs, ground covers, native wildflowers, pollinator-friendly species. These plants help suppress weeds, conserve soil moisture, support beneficial insects, and create beautiful layered landscapes. Avoid placing thick lawns directly against tree trunks. Instead, create generous mulch rings around trees. Mulch conserves moisture, moderates soil temperatures, reduces competition from grass, and protects trunks from mower and string trimmer damage. Apply mulch 2 to 4 inches deep but never pile it directly against the trunk. Those volcano-shaped mulch piles often seen in commercial landscapes can trap moisture against bark, encourage decay, and invite pests. Now let's cover proper planting. Dig a hole 2 to 3 times wider than the root ball but no deeper than the root system itself. Planting too deeply remains one of the most widespread mistakes made by both beginners and experienced gardeners. The root flare, where the trunk widens into the root system, should remain visible above the finished soil level. After planting, water thoroughly to eliminate air pockets. Young trees require consistent moisture during establishment, especially through their first 1 or 2 growing seasons. Deep, infrequent watering encourages roots to grow downward and outward better than frequent, shallow watering. Pruning also deserves careful attention. Many people either prune far too aggressively or avoid pruning entirely. Young trees benefit from light structural pruning that establishes strong branch architecture. Removing crossing branches, damaged wood, and poorly attached limbs early prevents larger problems later. Excessive pruning, however, removes valuable leaf area that produces energy through photosynthesis. The goal is guidance, not constant reshaping. Here's another practical insight from professional arborists. Every pruning cut should have a purpose. If you cannot explain why a branch needs removal, it's often better to leave it alone. Let's examine some common mistakes that repeatedly create problems in small gardens. Buying based solely on current size. Ignoring mature dimensions. Planting too close to buildings. Choosing trees unsuited to local climate. Overwatering established trees. Planting too deeply. Neglecting pollination requirements. Skipping mulch. Improper pruning. Failing to consider future shade. Avoiding these simple mistakes dramatically increases long-term success. Biodiversity provides another compelling reason to plant thoughtfully. Trees create habitat for birds, butterflies, beneficial insects, and countless other organisms. Flowering species provide nectar. Fruiting trees supply food. Evergreens offer shelter. Native species often support significantly more local wildlife because they evolved alongside regional insects and birds. Even a single well-chosen tree can become a miniature ecosystem within a small garden. Landscape designers often combine different tree types to create year-round interest. Perhaps spring flowers from a redbud. Summer shade beneath a Japanese maple. Autumn fruit from a dwarf apple. Winter structure from a compact evergreen. This layered approach keeps even the smallest gardens visually dynamic throughout every season. As your tree matures, continue observing its health. Look for changes in leaf color. Dead branches. Cracked bark. Unusual fungal growth. Premature leaf drop. Early attention allows small problems to be corrected before they become serious. Finally, remember that the best tree isn't necessarily the rarest, most colorful, or fastest growing. The best tree is the one that matches your available space, local climate, soil conditions, maintenance preferences, and long-term goals. A carefully selected tree becomes more valuable with every passing year. It cools the garden, supports wildlife, produces flowers or fruit, adds seasonal beauty, creates memories, and quietly increases the enjoyment of your home for decades. Before you purchase your next tree, pause for a moment and imagine it 30 years from now. Picture its full height, its mature canopy, its roots, the shade it will cast, and the space it will occupy. If that future tree still fits comfortably within your garden while leaving room for everything else you hope to grow, you've likely found the perfect choice. Small gardens don't require small dreams. They simply reward smart planning. Choose trees for their mature character rather than their youthful appearance, respect their natural needs, give them enough room to thrive, and they'll reward you with beauty, productivity, biodiversity, and lasting value for generations to come.